Evening, everybody. It is Thursday, 13th of October, and I apologise if I look completely out of it, but I have good reason, for two reasons, one of which is better than the other. First reason is I've got a massive head cold. My head is completely stuffed up, and I have been for the last 3 days. But in the last 2 days, I have also barely slept. If you followed the challenge fairly early on, Dram number 75 was on the 7th of April, and that was when I did Hudson's Baby Bourbon, so called because I announced that my wife was pregnant with our third child. And not long after that, in fact it may have even been before I did that video, I got a sample, a few samples actually, from James Goggins, who sent me a pack of drinks by the drams, one of which was this one, which was Balcones, I'm going to go with Balcones Baby Blue Corn Whiskey. And I thought, right, I'm having a baby, it's got baby in the title, so I shall review that when baby is born. And yesterday at 2:26 in the morning, this little fella arrived. This is my son, Flynn Elias Bowers. So welcome to the world, Flynn. This one is for you. I've saved this for a few months. And yes, mother and baby are well, they're back home, but we are both very tired, not helped by the fact that I've got a massive head cold. My second daughter is also fevered up to the wazoo, she's got a massive cold, so it's all just an absolute madhouse. So I'm grabbing a quick 5-10 minutes while my wife feeds Flynn, and hopefully they get a bit of sleep tonight, and I shall crack on with this, and we'll see how the rest of the challenge goes, because it's going to be interesting. So, Balcones Baby Blue. So Balcones it's a craft distillery which is in Waco, Texas, which you may have heard of Waco for a more unfortunate reason, which I won't go into. And if you don't know about what happened in Waco, it's probably for the best several years ago. But this is the home of the Balcones distillery, which was set up in 2008 by this guy, a guy called Chip Tate. And he set it up it was an old, It was an old welding shop. And sounds like a very intense guy in terms of kind of like really, really passionate. He didn't buy stills from overseas and bring them in. He designed them and built them. He was even building his own barrels. Really, really hands-on, really particular, wanting to be involved in absolutely everything. And Balcones is actually a geological fault line that runs through, almost splits Texas in two by the sounds of it. And it runs near Waco, so that was the influence for the name. And from start off, it was one of these craft distilleries, and it was in the relatively early days of American craft whiskey, where it's small scale, it's passion about whiskey, it's kind of doing things slightly differently. And at the time he opened, there was about only 100 nationwide. You're looking at about 800, maybe even pushing near 1,000 at the moment. So in that time since he came in, and he was one of the first craft distilleries that really made it big, and it was like the sales were doubling every year. Now, there was a bit of a breakdown in 2014. It was basically December 2013 and then into 2014, where there was a major breakdown between Chip and a new heavy investor, almost like a sort of a key investor. Reading up on it, it's a bit of a mess. It's a bit, there's accusations left, right and centre. There's accusations about Chip, about his personality, about the way he was acting with people. There's been suing and counter-suing. There's been, Chip's been defending the way that he's been treated by the new ownership, essentially, and it's just a big mess. So in 2014, it came to a mutual agreement whereby he left the business. There was a no competition clause, which initially was supposed to be for 3 years. So for 3 years, he wasn't supposed to be involved in whiskey whatsoever. That was actually agreed at 15 months. So we are now at the place where Chip has actually launched, it's called Tate & Co. And I think we're about to get to the point where his whiskies will be involved. I think there's been some other spirits that he's done earlier. I think there was like a native Texas spirit that was earlier this year, but his whiskies are due to come fairly soon, because I think we are, if we haven't reached it already, we are very close to that 15-month mark. So Balcones continues. They have, in April of this year, they actually moved into a bigger facility, which was $14.5 million worth. Still in Waco, not that far away, kind of a few blocks down, but it allows them to make 4 times as much stock as they were previously. So they are ramping up everything. So this particular one is the Baby Blue, and it's a corn whiskey, which is a range that they did based on blue corn. Now, blue corn actually looks like this, and it is corn that is blue, funnily enough. And apparently it's got 20% more protein than other corn, and this results in a sweeter, nuttier flavour. And it's native to Southwest America and Mexico. So it's almost like a regional whiskey in terms of it's something unusual, something quite different. The bottle itself looks like this. You're looking at in the UK, Whiskey Exchange is selling this for 64 quid. Master and Malt are selling it for 70. I think it's about dollars for pounds, maybe like $55. Now there is a blue corn bourbon which has been matured for 3 years to be bourbon, whereas the Baby Blue is actually a younger release. It sounds like it's been matured for about 6 months as a minimum, but maybe not more than a year. So it's younger. There's less wood influence because the reason for releasing the Baby Blue, is so that you're getting more of the character of the corn itself rather than an influence from the wood that it's been in. So it's 46%. Yes, I am going to try and nose it, but I can't promise anything, to be honest, because it's all in my head, this cold. I've not got temperatures, fevers, anything like that. It's sneezing, and I just feel like a balloon's being pumped up inside my head. I'm going to try my best, but if anybody from Balcones is watching, I am not going to be giving the fairest review probably that I possibly could do, simply because my senses are so dulled at the moment. But I promise myself, I've held on to this for a good few months, possibly 6 months if not more, specifically to review this one when my son was born. So I'm going to give it a go, but I can't promise anything. I do actually have a little bit left, so what I might do is I might re-review it maybe after the challenge is done. I'll keep hold of that and actually do it with a fresh pair of nostrils. But it's just it's just hit the back of my nose, and it's just one that makes me sneeze. Okay, what I can get is actually quite pure and quite clean, but I'll put my hands up. I can't honestly get a great deal out of this. It's cutting through, but I can't get an awful lot out of it. But that's me, that's my head, that's nothing to do with the whiskey itself. It smells quite clean and it's sharp, but not in a bad way. It's really cutting through, but it's not burning the back of my nose. It's not alcohol burn. This is a very quite fresh. What I can pick up, which isn't much, is nice. It's pleasant. It's not sweet or rich. This is it's youthful, which goes with the age of the whiskey itself. Like I say, it's really difficult for me to pick up anything just because of the way that my nose is. There'll be some of you watching this going, well, you shouldn't really be doing this. I know, but I've got to be doing this every day, and I've got to do the best that I can, because otherwise I'll get too far behind. But even with a stuffed up nose, I don't think this is a bad nose whatsoever. Right, let's give it a taste. Hopefully I'll get a bit more out of it. Wow. That's young. You can tell that's young, but there's a real intensity to it. But it's not fiery. It doesn't kick the back of your throat, although that's probably because it's quite thick. But right on the tip of your tongue. But it's not even sour. But there's a nice fieriness to it. But it's unusual in that it's spicy, but it's not. It's almost chili spice. It's not like cinnamon or nutmeg or anything like that. It's not really a sweet spice. it's almost like a chili sensation, but a really pleasant chili sensation. Nothing too overpowering, but it's very, very clean. And there is a nuttiness to it as well. Kind of like Brazil nuts. Not quite as sweet as a hazelnut, a bit drier, but sort of hazelnuts, not quite almonds. Yeah, it's not really hazelnuts. It's got that slightly drying characteristic of a Brazil nut, but then also Brazil nut has an inherent sweetness to it that kind of really comes to that. I'm trying to think what else it could be. Almost pistachios? Possibly. There is definite nuttiness to it though. It's a young whiskey. It definitely is a young whiskey, but it's not raw, very, very youthful, but there is enough in there that makes it very interesting. I would like to try the Baby Blue Bourbon. I think the 3 years plus aging, I think will release a lot more complexity out of that. This is a young whiskey. And it's not a fiery whiskey, but I can imagine people will be picking this up going, oh yeah, this is a really fiery whiskey. Oh yeah, I love it. This is kind of like, it's this manliness bullshit that you tend to get with some whiskey drinkers where they're like, oh yeah, it's really raw, it's really rough, it's a proper man's whiskey. And it's like, oh, don't talk nonsense. Oh, it's a test of strength. No, it's a young whiskey, but sometimes you're in the mood for that intensity. Sometimes you want a whiskey that you've got to do a bit of a battle with and kind of take a bit of time over it. This is a sipping whiskey, but this isn't necessarily a after dinner with a cigar in front of a log fire. It's a different kettle of fish altogether. It probably would do really well in some premium cocktails. If you've got some really good ingredients to put with this to make a cocktail. I wouldn't put it with a mixer, certainly. If you did want to put it with a mixer, though, there's enough intensity in that it really will cut through whatever you put it with. If you drink your whiskey with Coke and you've got a bottle of this, I think it would be a bit of a waste of some very good whiskey. But this would be head and shoulders above any other whiskey and Coke that you've had before. I would almost be tempted as well to pour yourself a glass of it and maybe leave it a quarter of an hour, half an hour, let it really mellow out in the air. I think that would probably do some benefit. I'm not going to do that because you'll be sat here for half an hour watching me twiddle my thumbs. But there's enough in there, even with a stuffed up head, which hopefully you can tell by the sound of my voice is stuffed up to hell. But there is enough in there that makes me want to go back to it. I want to keep that little bit that I've got left and come back to it because there is enough nutty flavour. And I'm not a big fan of nuts. When I had the Borders grain, that was too nutty. I'm not a big fan of nuts, but this works well. There is a sweetness to it. There is a sharpness to it. There is a chilly heat as well. It's not overpowering, but it's just some really good balanced flavours that merge really well. And make me want to come back to it. It would take me a while to get through a bottle of this because, like I say, it's not a quaffing whiskey, for want of a better word. It's not one that you can just sit down and pour yourself a large shot of it and just drink it without even thinking about it. This needs some work. This needs some, it needs some me time, but it's worth it. And it makes me very interested to see what the rest of them are like. And it also makes me interested to see what Chip Tate's doing with his Tate & Co. Reading up on it, it sounds like a whole can of worms were opened and it just looks like a mess. But Chip himself, from what he has created, makes me want to find out what he's doing, because whatever the stories are regarding the way that he's acted with people and everything like that, in terms of what he's done as an end result, yeah, okay, this isn't his work because this may well have been released after he left the business, but it makes me want to find out what he's doing, and it makes me want to find out the rest of the Balcones range. So yeah, I think it's worth checking out, preferably if you don't have a massive head cold. So that's me done. a glass to my son. If you are watching along with another drink, if you want to raise your glass to my son, it would be very much appreciated. And we shall crack on with the rest of our Irish. I've got 2 Irish left. I need to upload 1, but then I've got 2 Irish left, and then we'll move on to Japanese. Ooh, quite looking forward to that. So I shall see you in the next one. Cheers.